So thank you everybody for joining. We're having just a couple technical difficulties with one of our presenters and trying to work through it, but we're just going to let everybody in before we get started. A couple things. My esteemed associate is going to post some community agreements in the chat. And everybody's letting everybody in, so I don't have to do it. Great. And I'm Victoria Alexander. I run an organization called Resilient Red Hook, and I'm part of the Public Land for Public Good Coalition that we've been working on for a while. And we brought this panel together to help bring this conversation forward. I hit record, right? Yes. I did the recording part. I have the panel up. Housekeeping items. There are over 235 people that registered for this panel discussion tonight, so we are going to keep questions to the chat, but Alex is going to be managing the chat and we'll be feeding the questions to our panelists. The precipice for this and the timing of this panel is because of something called the Executive Order for Lift. Oh, I'm going to read what Jenny asked me to read. On behalf of the Public Land for Public Good Coalition, I want to welcome you all. For too long, we've seen our publicly owned land turned over to developers for profit, and many land justice activists and planners have concerns about a new mayoral task force known as LIFT. It was an executive order that came out on day one of his administration. The LIFT task force seeks to identify as much city-owned land as possible to build more housing. Tonight's panel, we will take a critical look at how public land is developed and for whom. And now I'm supposed to turn it over to Ron. Ron, are you there?
I'm here.
Great. I know your camera's not working, but I'm gonna read your bio and let you take it from here. So Ron Schiffman, our moderator for tonight, who we're so appreciative of having, is a distinguished community planner, urbanist, and professor emeritus at Pratt Institute's Graduate Center for Planning and the Environment. With over 5 decades of dedicated to community-based planning, equitable development, and racial and environmental justice. As a co-founder of the Pratt Center for Community Development, he helped shape initiatives that empower local communities and promote inclusive urban growth. And his service on the New York City Planning Commission reflects his commitment to using public resources for public good while advancing participatory planning that centers underserved communities. Ron, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much for that introduction. Tonight, we begin with a simple but powerful idea. Public land and the public actions that create land value should serve the public good. We meet at an important moment. New York has a mayor with a progressive vision, but achieving that vision requires more than just new leadership. It requires a new way of thinking about public land, housing, jobs, economic development, and democratic participation. When we talk about public land, we should think broadly. It includes not only land owned by government, but also the enormous value created through public actions, rezonings, infrastructure investments, tax incentives, development rights, and public approvals. Whenever public action creates public wealth, the public should share in that wealth, in that value. For too long, decisions about public land and publicly created value have been driven by short-term financial goals rather than long-term public benefit. Too often, communities are invited into the process only after the important decisions have already been made. The result has been displacement, the loss of industrial jobs, weakening of working waterfronts, and growing inequality. As the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy has noted recently, public land should be treated as a public trust and used to advance lasting public purposes. That principle is especially important in New York City. Tonight's panel brings together people who are showing that there is a better way. You will hear from leaders advancing an innovative vision for the Brooklyn waterfront through the Green and Resilient Industrial District, or GRID, a model that protects manufacturing and maritime uses while creating good-paying jobs, building community wealth, and strengthening climate resilience and resisting displacement. You'll hear from community leaders who oppose casinos because they believe neighborhoods should be strengthened through productive investment, local businesses, and good jobs, not gambling. You will hear from advocates working to preserve manufacturing, expand truly affordable housing, and ensure that public housing remains a permanent public asset to be repaired and modernized, not privatized. Although these efforts focus on different issues, they share a common purpose, ensuring that public land and public power are used to create public value. That means affordable homes, good jobs, healthy neighborhoods, clean air and water, resilient waterfronts, and opportunities for future generations. It also means giving the people who live and work in our communities a meaningful voice in shaping those decisions from the beginning, not after the deals have been done. Public land is one of our city's greatest assets. It should be managed as a public trust, creating benefits for the surrounding community and for all the New Yorkers. Tonight's conversation is about how we can build that future together. It's now my pleasure to introduce our panelists. Do you want to do that? Or should I do that, Victoria?
We've already posted everybody's bio in the chat so that you can just, so we don't have, you can give 1 or 2 lines.
Okay, I'll do that. And it's my pleasure, hold on one second, to introduce the 3 panelists. The first speaker will be Elizabeth Yampierre, who is an internationally recognized Puerto Rican and climate justice leader. She is the executive director of Uprose, which is celebrating their 60th anniversary this year. And later in the year, she'll be celebrating her 30th anniversary as the director of that group. She will be followed by Jack Yu, who is a lifetime Flushing, Queens resident and organizer against billionaire Mets owner Steve Cohen's proposed Metropolitan Park Casino, who will be followed by Renee Kite, who is an environmentalist, but her recent activity where she and I have met on a number of occasions is member of the FEC Tenants Against Demolition, fighting to stop the proposed demolition of Fulton and Elliott Chelsea houses and protect Section 8 public housing as a public asset. Those are going to be our 3 speakers, and I'd like to ask each of them to spend 2 minutes just themselves introducing their work and their focus, and then I'll follow that up with an additional question. So Elizabeth, if you're there, please take it over for 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Ashe, everyone. Ashe, mi gente. It is wonderful to be here. And I am really grateful to Ron for being our John Brown. Uprose has been working really to decarbonize Sunset Park. We are working on looking at the industrial waterfront and engaging in a green reindustrialization. I think that our fight against industry cities, rezoning application, and that success led to offshore wind. And our community-owned solar, which we just launched, that will benefit 200 families in Sunset Park, are an example of our goal. I think John asked me to define land. I don't know if this is the time to tell you what that is, but this country was built on taking our land, taking our resources, our bodies, and the over 800 fires that are happening in Canada right now are a consequence of those takings. Climate change is the consequence of a history of enslavement, colonialism, extraction, and corporate control, which we're seeing in private land right now, is the legacy of that history that we have here in the United States. And our response to that is rematriation. And people think about that differently. This is indigenous land, and we believe in investing in systems that will encompass our ability to have drinkable water, food sovereignty, renewable energy, the right to remain in an economic system that moves us away from extraction, a just transition. And so we Those of us who are part of the climate justice movement believe that we're here to fight the bad, build the good, change the rules. And we do that by literally looking at place and changing it so that it not only addresses our current needs, but the needs that climate change is demanding. So I hope I did that in 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. Uh, let's jump over to Jack.
Thank you so much, Ron, and thank you everybody for joining the Zoom tonight. I just want to start off by acknowledging Ron and all the other panelists for having really impressive resumes. I can't say the same for myself. I'm just a guy in the corner of the street sticking a sign in the air in opposition to Steve Cohen's casino. So my name is Jack Hu. I'm from a local community group that is opposed to billionaire Mets owners Metropolitan Park Casino. He has essentially used his power, money, and influence to privatize 78 acres of public land in the surrounding communities of Flushing, Corona, to push through a casino and luxury entertainment center that is only going to harm the surrounding communities. It's going to exploit the most vulnerable members of our communities. All of the luxury development is going to displace members of the community that are already paying exorbitant amounts of money to stay in their homes. This process has unfortunately been very undemocratic. And right now, our goal is to defeat the project. And we have three main focuses right now. We have a lawsuit that is active, as well as we are continuing to put public pressure on all of the stakeholders, including Governor Hochul, to revoke the license. And we're also putting financial pressure on the project.
Renee?
Okay, my name is Renee Kitt, and I'm fighting for Section 9 public housing. So what public housing means, it's federally funded and state and city as well, permanently affordable housing. It is owned and operated by NYCHA. That's the New York City Housing Authority. NYCHA is not public housing. It's merely an administrative end. That's what it does. If it is not operated by a public housing authority, it is not Section 9 public housing. What I'm fighting for is my home. It is not to be demolished or destroyed or used to benefit other people. Right now, Fulton and Elliott Chelsea are in the crosshairs. It has been said by many that we are the model. Right now, we're fighting to remain Section 9 public housing, fighting not to be demolished, fighting not to be used, fighting for our environment. Between Fulton and Elliott Chelsea, there are 370 mature trees. We, along with Penn South, Fulton and Elliott Chelsea, are the environment of Chelsea. We are where you breathe. There's nothing like coming into our development and feeling the cool air coming from everywhere else. It is hot. We have coolness, we have life. We give life and air and breath to the community of Chelsea. I'm fighting to remain that way, to stay in place, to age in place, in a community, in mutual aid, in our social network. That's what I'm doing. And with that comes everything else.
Okay. Could you spend just 1 minute describing who your neighbors are and how important this struggle to keep the buildings from being demolished is, Renee?
My neighbors are, they are all kinds of wealth. So we have Penn South across the street, a limited equity cooperative. Many of them have aged in place and lived there since 1962. I'm across the street from the High Line, which was rezoned, and it's quite wealthy. So now if you live between 10th and 11th Avenues or 10th to the West Side Highway, you are usually very wealthy. We have people who have been in this neighborhood a very long time. We live across the street from Penn South, 2 blocks away from the London Terrace. Many of these are well known. Some people across the street are rent stabilized and rent controlled. We are at the apex of a movement, an apex of demolition called what? Redevelopment. So it doesn't come across as harsh, as violent as it is. So our neighbors are everyone. We are a microcosm of New York itself, with all sorts of people who live here.
Oh, thank you. Elizabeth, we've talked a little bit both you and I in the past, but in general about the accomplishments of Uprose, particularly in putting forth an innovative plan called the Grid Plan. Could you spend about 5 or 6 minutes just describing what the Grid Plan is, how it came about, and what its purposes are?
Sure, thank you for asking that question. So several years ago, and by the way, it's important for you all to know that Uprose is an intergenerational organization, because these struggles, they take years, and you age in the middle of trying to get these victories. So we were doing this block to block organizing in Sunset Park when we started getting calls about Jamestown applying, that they had come to Industry City. They were partial owners and they were applying for a rezoning application. And we were asked by our community to lead the fight against the rezoning. And at the time, we were really thinking that this, we were thinking about climate change and we were thinking about infrastructure. And we had not thought about it in terms of displacement until the community said, no, this is exactly what this is. And we need you to help support us winning, because these people are coming in with tons of money and public relations firms and a lot of resources that they're going to throw at the community, which of course they did. And so we first assessed we asked to meet with them several times. They didn't provide us with much information. It was very misleading. They gave the community organizations a lot of funding. They did get all those public relations firms, and they were promoting Industry City as a destination location for the privileged. Basically, they had a vision to turn that part of Sunset Park into Williamsburg. And we, in our community, since 1998, it's important for people to know that I've been in Uprose since 1996. And I remember as early as 1998, people in Sunset Park talking about a walk to work community, about retaining the industrial character as a way of retaining the working class character of the community. And when we learned that the community was really concerned about retaining the industrial character, it said to us, well, then we need to figure out how we turn something that has been responsible for toxic exposure, for a legacy of harm, asthma, upper respiratory disease, and a lot of the health issues that Sunset Park has. We're going to have to keep it industrial, but make sure that it is not killing the host community. And so, so there has been community planning for more than 10 years. And so the grid really comes out of a legacy and a long history of community planning, where the community has had consensus about, one, wanting to stay, wanting to be able to work locally, and also wanting to be able to have an industrial sector that is built for the future. They talked about the deep channels, about making sure that there was maritime uses, that they would be able to engage in food sovereignty. All of those things that are, each of which is complex, are built into the grid and come from a long history of planning, of organizing, of meaningful community engagement. And I say meaningful community engagement because people think, particularly planners and folks that are academics, like having ideas that they developed in their classrooms, that they developed in their offices, and bringing them to communities so that then communities can say, yes, I like that, or I don't like this. This is completely different. This starts with a community mandate. This starts with community engagement, saying these are the things that are priorities for us. And planners and other people play a different role. They come in to provide technical assistance so that we could look at, how do we declare a special purpose district in Sunset Park? What does the text language have to be? What kind of land use decisions should we be looking at to make sure that the community vision gets operationalized and we can make that manifest? And pieces of that have already happened with the community on solar. After Superstorm Sandy, people said they wanted to be able to address the issue of renewable energy and they wanted ownership at its core. That's what the community on solar is. And parts of that, the fact that we defeated the siting of power plants and stopped other kinds of efforts to make the industrial sector a source of public health harm to our community. So some of those things have already happened. But now what we have is an opportunity to look at the largest significant maritime industrial area in New York City and think about, well, what does New York City need? What does Sunset Park need? And what does the region need so that we can start building for climate adaptation, mitigation, and resilience? How do we make sure that hydro pumps are being built in Sunset Park? How do we make sure that EDC stops following the market and starts creating a market that is going to address our local needs? How do we make sure that we are engaged in EDC reform and DCP reform? Because those are the two agencies that have done so much harm. And special purpose districts have been used for privileged communities all over New York City, but they have not been used to center equity and to center climate justice. And so the grid not only comes out of this plan where we're able to use as an alternative to the plan that was being proposed by Industry City. That was the plan. You couldn't move away from it. It was not just aspirational, it was operational. It wasn't like we came together and started thinking about things that were not possible. Not only was it possible, but we were working to get the Climate Leadership Community Protection Act passed at statewide level. And we were also working on in a multidimensional way to make sure that there was teeth, that this could actually happen and that the resources were there. So, so there's consensus in the plan. The elected officials have no choice. They have to support the plan because it is an economic justice plan. They can't say that we are thinking about something that is not viable. It is economically viable. It would hire people locally. It would bring people into climate jobs that pay better than your regular sort of servant economy jobs that were being proposed by Jamestown and Industry City. And it sort of also takes us to the future. It takes into account the fact that if there's a high housing crisis in New York City, well, we've got cement companies and we've got infrastructure in the industrial sector that can build for it. If there are floods and we need permeable surfaces, that can be built for it there. So if there's a need for mass surface transit, that could happen. If we're talking about food sovereignty, because we found out through Superstorm Sandy that Hunts Point was in danger of disappearing, well, we can use maritime uses to connect upstate economically depressed farmers for food distribution in Sunset Park. So we were thinking about all the things and thinking about what does an industrial sector of the future looks like. And that was the conversation that was being had on the ground, in the churches, at the community board, in every place that you can imagine. And that makes itself into the grid, into that plan that is now operational. Combine that plan with an administration now that is really talking about equity and trying to center justice, and needs now to start moving away from conventional thinking about land use and conventional thinking about public land and conventional thinking about governance, and think about co-governance and how you center economic justice, climate justice, and equity. This is about migration. This is about homelessness. This is about affordability. We have the infrastructure in place, the land's in place, the only land that we can use in a place like New York City, and we need to protect it. It is sacred. That's why I talked about rematriation. It is sacred. It is the place where we're going to be able to address issues that have to do with water, that have to do with food sovereignty, that have to do with regenerative energy. And these models have ownership at its core. So, for example, the community-owned solar initiative, all of that money gets invested back into the community. The idea of the community owning a utility and that it has happened, that we have made that happen, is an example of what can be replicated and what we can do at all our significant maritime industrial areas. So that's where the grid comes from. And so right now the campaign is to declare Sunset Park a special purpose district. And we have approached every agency to create a task force that provides Sunset Park with an opportunity to do this in a way that that brings all these different agencies together so that they're not siloed and they are working in a way that is cohesive. But I can't say that the plan comes out of uprose, that we're sort of sitting there navel gazing, thinking about what is in the best interest of the community. What I can tell you is that we're there to staff our people. We are from there. We live there. We look like the people in our community, and we're there to staff our community the way that elected officials get staffed. They give us the marching orders, and we're basically there while they're raising 2 or 3 children and going to school or doing 2 or 3 jobs. We are there to staff them. So the vision and our responsibility is also then to check in and say, is this what you want? Is this the right perspective? Are we doing right by you? So that's how we use access to the privilege of our education, despite the fact that we all come from struggle, to report back and to make sure that we're moving in a direction that is aligned with the priorities that the community has articulated. It is a very different culture of practice than we see everywhere, but we would say that it's time for a cultural practice where people understand that there's a place for privilege, and then that there's a place where the front line has to speak for itself, and that Black and brown people aren't supposed to be treated as sort of the recipients of somebody's good intentions, but need to be seen in leadership and deciding what's in the best interest of their community, because they've always known. How we build alignment and how we build just relationship comes through this process. And that's one of the reasons why when I opened thanking Ron, and I thanked him for being our John Brown, is because he hasn't come into the meetings heavy-footed to tell us what's in our best interest. He's come in with the intention of how do we do this stuff together. And I think that we have an opportunity now to start
Yeah, that's
rethinking.
not the question.
Oh, oh, okay. I don't know. I didn't want to talk. I had to mention you because I think you're an example of how we move big pieces of work together. It does require a lot of different kinds of people with different levels of expertise. And at the heart of that is what the community is telling us is a priority. So the grid comes out of co-governance. It comes out of community building. It comes out of grassroots organizing. It comes out of popular education, all of those different things. So,
Thank you. Jack, I want to get to you because to a great extent, this is a good segue. You introduced yourself as just a neighborhood resident. The really important point I think that Elizabeth just made is that good planning really is non-hierarchical. Every member of the community is an expert. Every person who comes in has a different way of looking at things. And it is really the community that could weave together a lot of the strands around how land should be used properly in their neighborhoods. One of the things that Elizabeth talked about was the grid, but the way of developing that idea was to really exercise the control over the streets that were in the neighborhood, over the reuse of the zoning laws and how they were benefiting Jamestown, an international corporation that took over the properties there. While it was privately owned, a lot of those private properties are linked together by city streets. A lot of those private properties needed to be, were requesting added floor area ratio or added space to build on. And that was through a public action. So when we talk about land, we have to think about it in a much broader context. And in your situation, you're thinking about it from the perspective of trying to protect against gambling. But why is, first of all, gambling an issue that has raised attention in your community? And in what way do you think using either both private property or public actions or even public property in the area will be detrimental to the lifestyle and to the aspirations of the people in your area?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Ron. I think in our scenario, this is a perfect example of how public land is not only not being used for public good, but is in fact being used for public harm. So I'm a lifelong Flushing resident. Flushing is a predominantly Asian immigrant working class community. in which where our people are disproportionately harmed by gambling addiction. And this issue is actually really personal to me because my mother and I have watched my father struggle with gambling for over 3 decades. So I know from firsthand experience how gambling addiction destroys households, preys on working class immigrants that came to this country for opportunity, right? Like they really just wanted to build a better life for themselves, for their family, etc. And it's being taken advantage of by somebody who's worth $23 billion that owns 2 Picasso paintings to the worth of $1 billion. And so from the get-go, this has just been a completely harmful project that our community has never wanted. And instead of getting our consent to actually build infrastructure for the needs that the community has, instead, what has happened is this project has been pushed through without our community's approval. Steve Cohen has spent millions of dollars to hire over a dozen lobbyists, has donated plenty of obviously money to politicians, to local nonprofits, has bullied local businesses to basically manufacture consent for this project that is going to harm our community, not just in terms of gambling addiction, but in so many different other ways. I think when you look at the business model of casinos, they actually just extract from the local economies. They don't actually uplift the small businesses, the discretionary income that residents would otherwise spend at your local restaurant or your local business are instead being funneled into the casino, of which obviously Steve Cohen would be taking a significant cut of that money. But not only that, I think there's a lot of misconception that the project is only a casino, but also includes a lot of luxury development as well. It includes luxury towers. It includes entertainment complex in a community where 30% of the residents pay over 50% of their income toward rent, particularly in Corona, where I think over 80% of folks that live there are renters and their median household income is $45,000. That is close to the minimum wage, right? And so how many residents are you going to displace because of that? And then add on top of that, the casino, it just really becomes a double whammy that exploits and displaces a really vulnerable community in our city.
Thank you. Renee, I just would like you to pick up on what Jack just was talking about in terms of greed driving a project, because you talk about the fact that Fulton and Elliott Chelsea houses are facing demolition, and you talk about the fact that it's near Hudson Yards and some of the development there. Let us all know who and what would become of this property once if the demolition does take place and the new development takes place. Who benefits, what occurs, and why is that really to be objected to? And link that also to the struggle that you have around making sure that Section 9 is kept and not other forms of alleged public housing. Go ahead,
Okay,
Renee.
so who we're fighting is Related Company, a $60 billion company. Jamar Adams was the person selected by the Resident Association and NYCHA, some of the Resident Association and NYCHA, to be the
NYCHA is
developer.
New York City Housing Authority.
Sorry, I thought most people would know that. Most people do.
That's right.
Basically, where they're at is telling us that it is best for us to be demolished because they want to do that for us. So it would be Related Companies would then put us into 3 buildings in the campus of Elliott Chelsea. Each campus gets 3 buildings, so that's 6 buildings altogether. The majority of everything else goes to affordable housing and luxury development. So public land is going to benefit a $60 billion company. The project-based Section 8, and by that I mean the subsidy goes to related companies. It will not be going to the individual. So project-based Section 8 is different than the regular Section 8 that people know. Allegedly, 1 year after the conversion process, they will get a Section 8 voucher. We all know that's most likely not true. And that the part that they don't say, it is pertaining to the availability. So what we're fighting is a David and Goliath struggle. We're fighting against a company that is billions of dollars and has done a multi-phase project in other cities dealing with public housing. It's well known of Raising Liberty, Miami-Dade, where they destroyed Liberty Housing and then had built in phases the affordable housing component. When they built there, it continues to leak. It has mold, it has issues. The film Raising Liberty was brought to Miami at the end because they were so scared of the power of related companies. When we found out about Raising Liberty, related companies and, should I say, the Fulton Tenants Association said, no, it's not that related companies, only for us to say, yes, it was, and to be proven right. So related uses public housing to make its money, public benefit. Our tax dollars goes to them. So is it really a very profit company, or are we actually subsidizing it? That's something we need to start thinking about. These same bad developers that everyone complains about are now part of the PACT process. PACT is Permanent Affordability Commitment Together, New York's version of RAD, which is Rental Assistance Demonstration. Who we are fighting is them. The rezoning of the High Line has brought this into a high opportunity community, and we will have to fight them with everything, and we are working with broader coalitions. But it's FEC Tenants Against Demolition, who basically walked every building, knocked on every door, and met all the tenants, and we spoke to them. And they do not want a demolition. This proposed demolition, which related NYCHA and Essence continue to stake as if they have the permission to do so. They do not. They have a conditional proposal, demolition, but they have to meet objectives. We have a RAD conversion commitment. That is a list that says this is what NYCHA has to do. It has not been confirmed. They have not done all. They do not have permission to demolish Fulton or Elliott Chelsea. They just continue to act like it and everyone believes it and nobody asks the question. So what we are fighting is them. We are fighting to stop subsidizing related companies. We are fighting for our homes and our community and our environment. Living near Hudson Yards, we have dealt with the environmental disaster it has wrought on us. The continuing black cars, the overloading of traffic and transportation that goes all the way to 15th Street. The thing that is not said is that we live, at least Elliott Chelsea, is within 5 blocks of the Lincoln Tunnel. What would be going on at the same time of this proposed demolition is also Gateway, is also the redevelopment of Port Authority, also the Western Rail Yards. We would have to be living with all of that, as well as the environmental disaster that would be wrought upon us, all because people have decided that this is what would be best for us. So that's what we're fighting. Other people's decisions that have been made for us, about us, and people who will not listen to us or what we have said, which is we do not want demolition. We want to continue under Section 9, and we want comprehensive modernization. We know you have the money. The decision has been not to give it to Section 9 housing. You have always had the money. The decision is that we are expendable, and we are not expendable. And we will fight not to be it. We will fight with everything we have, because frankly, we have no other choice.
Renee, how many new buildings will be built? You said 3 for the residents of
Right.
that are being displaced. What else is being built there?
Luxury housing, of course. We do not, and of course, affordable housing under Housing Connect. We do not know the income bands. We know that in New York City, low income is considered $56,000 to $90,000. And I believe in 2026, it's changed. So basically, when you're saying you're building low income housing, who are you really building for? NYCHA, it's up to 120% of the AMI. We have a wider band, a wider economic diversity. We're an intergenerational, multi-ethnic community, and far more than what has been told about us. So that's what we're fighting, and that's who we're fighting for.
Just uh, just as a point of reference, the Jack mentioned that the median income in Queens, where he lives, and around where the gambling casino is going to go, is about $45,000. The median income for a family of four is roughly just short of 4 times that. It's gone up so dramatically in the city because the area median income for everybody is based on the counties that make up the New York Standard Metropolitan Statistical Area, which includes Westchester and Suffolk counties. But what's been happening recently is because of some of our neoliberal housing policies and so-called affordable housing levels, the average income of New York City is going up dramatically itself. So a lot of the when we talk about 30% or 20% affordable, we're also talking about 80 to 70% luxury. And that
Right.
luxury is adding dramatically to the median income of the city of New York. And so many of the neighborhoods, affordable housing is 2 to 3 times the level of what people in that particular area can afford. So it's an issue that we really have to start talking about in a really important in an important conversation, and begin to look at how do we really address public value, the benefits, and who really recaptures that value. And that's part of the definition of public land for the public good. And I'm going to throw the ball to you, Elizabeth. How do you begin to look at how we use democracy and community planning to achieve, through organizing, a greater share of the public value that's generated by either both our land or how we decide to use it?
Well, it's become more and more difficult. All of our communities have a lot of families that are undocumented. And so while dealing with extreme weather events, dealing with extreme policing, dealing with ICE, having to deal with climate change, it's overwhelming. Sometimes people are even afraid to leave their homes. Sometimes they're afraid to go to school because you never know when there's going to be an ICE raid. So being able to get people in the community requires a lot of creativity, and also requires you being able to break things down, make it accessible, make it digestible, and to be where they are. We find that even the stats don't tell the story. When you've got a community that has been seriously gentrified, and you've got people who have a lot of opinions about their individual needs versus the collective needs. I can give you an example where, the community may say they need more open space because their children lead the city on like rates of diabetes and obesity. And then people saying, yeah, but I want a dog run. And I remember being in a meeting saying, I've had 2 chihuahuas, and, they're just going to have to run around the house if it means that there's a child who doesn't have access to open space. We've got neighborhoods now that are conflicted because they have different values. And so engaging people is difficult. And then you've got the emergence of people who have political agendas, who say they are about grassroots organizing, but they are duplicating old models that are patriarchal and determine who our leaders are for us. And so it's difficult. Now, I will say that it's not a 9 to 5 situation. This is 24/7, and justice is 24/7. Right now, there's a workshop going on in Sunset Park about a special purpose district. And we've got a cool refuge open at one of the churches so that people can come in if it's too hot outside. And that's my staff out there, right? At times that are really uncomfortable for them. So we are working on making sure that the information is available in different languages, that there's childcare available, that we are able to provide food. and that we're able to provide information that people can digest and then give us back their understanding. The language of disciplines is exclusive. It's elitist. And so, for many of the people, because I scrolled through to see who was in the room, you've got a lot of planners and a lot of educators who will come in and talk about M1 zones, and will talk about things in a way that they figure people don't understand because they're not as sharp. No, they're sharp. They just didn't go to graduate school, and they didn't have access to this elite education. And so grassroots organizations really have to do the work of making that information accessible in a popular educational framework that is multilingual and multi-ethnic and really addresses all the needs that are local. What I've learned over the years of doing this work is that people know exactly what they need and what they want, and that our responsibility is not to speak for them, but to facilitate making that happen. And I've sat in meetings where I've heard people who, like my mom, didn't have a formal education. I mean, Sunset Park is a neighborhood of over 130,000 people. Part of that neighborhood is a Latino mixed Caribbean and Central American. And then the other part is Chinese, mostly Fujian. All of those people, I would say the majority of those people are struggling economically, and have a lot of things in common, despite some tensions that are being created by right-wing influences in Sunset Park. And when you get them in a room, and you have a respectful conversation, you find out exactly what they need, and then it's a matter of building trust over time. Organizing doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen by getting on the phone and doing robocalls. It literally is being on the block, being at the street of the block parties, knocking on the door, sitting on the stoops. It means providing information that is accessible. It's not sexy the way that people make it seem. It's being out when it's really hot, when it's really uncomfortable. Today, I woke up to news that one of my heroes, who was a Black Panther and Young Lord, passed away. And I couldn't even recover from that before I knew that I needed to figure out how we were going to get our young people to this cool refuge, so that people would have access to a place that was safe from ICE, so that they can cool off in this extreme heat. This is hard work. And I think people like being sort of like button, activists, and like all the memes, and they think that they're going to learn all this stuff online. Now, this is on the ground in the neighborhood, and really loving your people that makes it possible for you to be successful in base building and organizing. So I would just say that I don't know how else to express how also being intergenerational is really important. It's important because young people have a particular perspective that we might not have, and we have a political read of the room that we've learned through the years of doing this work, that they should have to spend time learning, that we should be able to share with each other, so that we can be collectively impactful. So I think that that's really important. I will say though that without organizing, I don't even know what we're talking about. There can't be any policy. There can't be any there can't be any community planning. There can't be any recommendations coming from the neighborhood if organizing is not happening. That has to be the heart of everything that we do. Otherwise, what we're doing is replicating old patriarchal models that have not served us.
Jack, how do you go about organizing in your community? And let's also talk a little bit about what you think you would like to see the new mayor do.
Yeah, and I just wanted to acknowledge Elizabeth's like really great ending there, right? Like that work is not romantic work, and it's very hard work, but I think sometimes that difficult work is some of the most important work that you can do, leading up to the December 15 decision to approve the 3 casino licenses in New York City. I think me and some fellow organizers have probably passed out like 30,000 flyers in the streets of Flushing and Corona. I mean, spent like 8 hours like every week just on the street, just standing with tables and giving out flyers. And my Chinese is okay and I can speak okay, and trying to switch between 3 different languages to speak to everybody on the street that's willing to listen to us. Even at certain moments, like enduring racism, like people coming up to me and saying, well, I think that the Asian community loves to gamble, right? And for me to like, sit there and endure that and try to like move the conversation toward kind of a productive manner. But that's the difficult work that we really need to do, right? If we care about our communities, this is a very asymmetrical battle. The developers that we're fighting against, they hire entire teams. They're worth billions of dollars. They hire teams that use their free time, their full-time job is to fight you, right? And what do, right? We're everyday working people with full-time jobs that have to find whatever free time we have at the end of the day or on our weekends to fight back. And so it is an asymmetrical battle, right? But the key thing that we all have to understand is that if we don't do the work, nobody's going to do the work. Nobody's going to save us but ourselves, right? And it's not like you have to dedicate your entire life to this fight, right? I think if everybody in this city right now today just decided they can dedicate 1 to 2 hours a week, right, and really organize ourselves, if everybody can scrape up $5 to $10, to put together a fund to help fight back. That's really all that we have to do, right? It's really not about each individual person being a savior. Rather, it's about all of us collectively realizing that we have the power to change things if only we'll just all each do a little bit more. And in terms of what the community needs, Ron, I think for me, like it's like starting with the problems that we face and identifying what the solutions are. I mean, I mentioned a couple of different facts earlier in the call. The median household income in Corona is 45,000. In Flushing, it's 70,000. The cost of housing is really high. 30% of households in both neighborhoods pay 50% of their income toward rent. In Flushing in particular, we have an aging population. 25% of our residents are over the ages of 65. We have a very old sewage system that floods, and our streets are flooded every time there's a huge storm because we don't have climate resilient infrastructure. There's constant flooding in basements, on the Van Wyck, on the LIRR. Flushing Meadows, Corona Park, every time it rains, you can't even run through that place without getting your shoes wet. And so with all of those problems, right, what is it exactly we need? I mean, the community has spoken. What the community needs is low income housing. What the community needs is like climate resilient parks to deal with the flooding, and not this massive infrastructure that actually doesn't benefit anybody but the billionaire. What the community needs is like community centers for our aging seniors, economic development for small businesses, places for social recreation. There's not enough parks around here. And I think that, the mayor and all of our elected officials need to start listening to this community that has been divested from and ignored for decades now.
Thank you. Renee, let's talk a little bit about the organizing efforts that are taking place in your neighborhood. And also, if you were to run into the mayor, what would be your suggestion to him about how public land should be utilized?
Well, how it happened, well, first of all, what I would say, how it's been being done has been building by building, floor by floor, each door knocked on and speaking with tenants. That's how it's begun. We continue to do that. We have meetings, resident association meetings in Elliott, Chelsea. We also have weekly meetings when we need to have discussed the latest thing that is happening. How we have done it is we begin internally, locally, and then we have also expanded into other places. Our neighbors are now also involved because they are affected, but we are the most directly impacted people. So it's resident leadership and resident leading the way. So after that, we've discussed it with our neighbors in Penn South, our neighbors across Chelsea, and letting them know what's going on at the same time. We have been to community board meetings. We don't expect them to save us. They are an advisory bureau. That's all they can do is advise. They have stated they are against the proposed basic alternatives in the environmental impact statements, but at the same time, they're also part of the reason we are into this. So we have to acknowledge that. At the same time, many things we're going to have to do is keep working internally. We have to work locally. We have to work with the residents that are here who are deeply and directly impacted by this. We will have to make decisions about what we want to do and what we need to do to bring forth us containing and continuing to be in Section 9 and also educating our residents in what Section 9 is. The residents' protections that we have, the right to organize, the fact that we can opine on how our developments are managed. We have those rights under the 964 regulations. These are things that other people want to have and are desperately fighting for that we actually do have. So that's also something. We also are working to unsilo housing. So we understand public housing is something unique and everyone doesn't have it, and most people don't understand what a benefit it is. Everyone should have up to 30% of their income, which helps you actually live. We always say housing is healthcare. Those are things we have to understand. We always continue to have to explain what public housing is, and that's very important as well. We work with wider coalitions in our neighborhood and our neighbors across all economic backgrounds. That's also necessary. Of course, we'll be accused of not being the people who can lead the fight, and that's something that will always happen no matter what. We understand that's a way of them coming back at us and trying to destroy and weaken our movement. We understand that, and we continue. What I would say to the mayor, listen to the residents. We have asked to speak with you. You do not want to speak with us. You simply say, or should I say, he has not said, but the Mayor Office of Tenant Protection has stated they want to move forward with this proposal. The word demolition, nobody likes to say, and that's our elected officials as well. We will continue to have to fight, continue to build coalitions and alliances within the neighborhood, within each building, and every floor that we're doing. What I would say to the mayor, listen to the people who are the most directly affected. We have said we want to remain in Section 9. We have said that we want comprehensive modernization. We have said that you need to listen to us. We are people who you do not need to make decisions for us. You speak about immigrant communities, we are that. You speak about the aunties, we are that. We are your aunts, we are your sisters, we are your brothers, we are your friends. We are everything you have said you want to be a part of. We are social housing. We are all that, but you will not listen. You have made a decision about us and for us, but you have said you are not that. Why are you not listening? You have told us we have the funding. You have the funding. You want to put in billions of dollars into NYCHA. You were not specific about it, but we know that. But you need to be specific. You need to meet with the residents of public housing. You need to speak to the Fulton, Elliott, Chelsea tenants who have told you we do not want demolition. I would simply say, those are your principles, live your principles. If they are not, then you need to say it and state why you do it. Do not talk through the Mayor's Office of Tenant Protections. You have shown us that you are not for us, and that office does not speak with us. They tried to keep going around that it'll be publicly financed. Yes, we'll be paying with the demolition through our own tax dollars. He needs to listen to the people who live here. That's what he needs to do. If he's not willing to do it, he needs to say so. Stop speaking through someone else. Speak with us. I would tell the mayor to do that. That's where he needs.
Hey, can I add something?
Yes, Elizabeth.
I want to, because, I'm watching sister speaking and I'm watching the chat. And the chat, some of the chat is highly problematic. I want you to take a moment to recognize the fact that the three speakers are people who are descendants of enslavement, colonialism, and extraction. And I don't think that we get seen. I think some people want to hear us. Some people want to extract from us, but some people don't want to show solidarity. Some people don't want to show what allyship looks like. And it doesn't look like what you think it looks like, because we're not here where there is a level of specificity that is being presented by Renee and by Jack about the solutions. We're not just giving you a laundry list of all the problems, but there's a level of specificity of the people who are living it. And so they didn't go and study it and came back to figure out what the problem. They have literally lived it without all the degrees that many of you have, and you're listening so that you could take stories. This is a moment in terms of the mayor. This is a moment where we're not going to be led by contemporary missionaries or people who use the low-hanging fruit to look like they're making a difference and capture the heart of people. This is really a time where everything that we're going through, whether it's what Jack is going through or Renee, it's all going to be exacerbated by extreme weather events. And we are living at a moment of fascism and extreme weather. And it is an unsafe place for all of us. And so for people to want to speak for us or think that they want to pick our brains, we don't have any time for that. And we don't have any time for contemporary missionaries either. What we want are allies and people that are going to support and lift and amplify the work that we're doing and work with us to make sure that we get the political leverage to manifest these visions and these solutions that are coming from our community. And I feel like I have to say that because as I watch, I'm like, well, this group can do this and this group can. No. Honestly, what we're asking for is solidarity, because I don't want to be a talking head. I don't want to come into a room to share 12 years of my work so that you can pick it apart and say, oh, I can use this and I could, coming from your place of privilege. This is that moment where we have to demand that the mayor engage in reform and co-governance, that he has to do an inventory of what has worked and what has not worked. And he has to apply all the solutions that our communities are demanding, because they're the same. Remember who we are. These solutions, the minute we hook up the neighborhood, we get displaced. So if we green it up, if we get those trees, if we are able to bring in the amenities that we deserve, all of a sudden a community comes in and is like, oh, I like that stuff, I want that, and we get displaced. There's almost like no incentive for us to be able to do the work that is necessary for us to be able to live and thrive in the communities that we're from. And so there has to be some effort to look at how these projects work with each other, a sharing of information and a system of co-governance, and a commitment of really reforming EDC so that it doesn't continue to use public space to serve private needs and follow the market instead of creating a circular economy. There has to be a reform of DCP and these agencies. We're real clear about what we need from neighborhood to neighborhood. And so, anyway, I'm sorry if I went off track. It's just that
Elizabeth, you did go off track.
I was watching and I was like, what? Pero, coño, ¿qué pasa? So,
You have one advantage. I can't see the chat.
okay.
I can't even see the questions that are going to come up because
Yeah.
all I have is my voice now.
And the
So-
other thing is, this is my last point, is this, we got to move away from the smartest kid in the room syndrome that we have that is so colonial and extractive. This has to be about the collective and how we are moving in a way that benefits our collective communities. This is not about ego. This is not about self. This is not about, well, I've always been the smartest and the hand goes up and up and up. You're in a meeting and you need to know how to step back and listen to the people that are impacted and capture those recommendations and ask, how can I serve? So I just want to say that because if there was ever a time for us to be able to work with each other, what this moment, this historical moment that we're in is demanding is that we work with each other in a way that we've never worked with each other before, that literally our lives are at stake. And that's not even rhetoric, it's real. Like, and while all of that is happening, the police is policing, ICE is icing, they're doing all the things to us while we're trying to work with an administration who should be centered on racial justice and equity and working with us in ways that are meaningful and transformational.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to say thank you.
Just want
That's
I
fantastic.
want to talk. I want to just apologize because for some technical reason I am not seeing the chat, and I'm going to have to rely on.
Totally.
Alex, you're gonna have to rely on Alex.
Do you want to hear some questions now? They're really good.
And
Ron?
We should
Sorry
go
to turn off the.
respondents first, respondents
Okay, we'll
Q&A.
go to
Yeah.
Marissa and
Yeah.
John Lave.
Ron, would you like to introduce John Leva and Marissa Solomon for brief comments from the floor? Uh-oh.
Ron's
Did we
still
lose
there?
Ron?
We lose Ron.
Oh, we
I
didn't
hope we
lose
didn't lose
Ron.
Ron.
I think we did.
Okay,
Hmm.
Oh, boy.
come back.
Okay. He's out in
Okay.
Shelter Island, so maybe
That's
it's bad
okay.
connection.
Marissa Solomon was one of the leaders that I met and was so amazing that showed up in Red Hook to support Red Hook in our fight against the BMT, and she came from Coney Island. So I thought that was an amazing olive branch of somebody, of other people showing up for other communities. And I wanted to say how much I appreciated that, Marissa, and I'm so proud of the work you did in Coney Island. So just want to give you the floor a little bit and hear about a fight that was won, fighting a massive rezoning of Coney Island for a very, you can tell us a little bit about the project and your fight.
Yeah, well, I want to thank you and all the people in Red Hook for all the support you gave us in Coney Island, and just all the panelists that have been speaking tonight. Every neighborhood has its own particular specific fights that they're going through, but there's such a commonality between the stories that we're hearing, and I think what really led to the success that we had in Coney Island is, well, first we really kind of we connected our community together, and I really have to give credit to people in my community who put together the group Coney Islanders Against the Casino. Some of whom are on the call tonight, Jenny Hernandez and brother Ronald Stewart, Lucy Mojica Diaz and Koichi Shiranagi. And they really, reached out to the different parts of our community, connecting us. And then what I think really led to our success is that we then reached out to the rest of Brooklyn, to other parts of Brooklyn. And, Jack was talking about standing on the street corner with a sign, and Elizabeth was talking about getting out there when it was all hot. And I remember me and Jenny going to the different farmers markets around Brooklyn last summer and handing out flyers and speaking to people and really getting other people in other neighborhoods invested in our fight. Because we knew, we're from Coney Island, and this is one of those neighborhoods that the city just ignores. For decades they've ignored us, and we knew they were going to ignore us again on this fight. And we really needed to reach out to other parts of the city. And that's what really gave us our strength and our power. We put together an online petition, and then there were other groups, and by the time everything was all said and done, we had delivered over almost 75,000 signatures to the politicians that were making this decision, and that was just something they really couldn't ignore. And so I just think what we're doing here tonight. That's why this is so important, and this forum here is so important, because the only way each individual community is really going to be successful is by joining together and bringing together our common strengths. And there's strength in numbers. Politics is a game of addition, and that's really kind of what we need to do. In Coney Island, we're talking about how they're trying to privatize public space. In Coney Island, they weren't just trying to privatize, the public land. They were literally trying to take the skies away from us and take the skies away from everybody in the city and put up these giant 40 and 60-story towers that would have literally blocked the sun away and just completely changed Coney Island. It wouldn't have been Coney Island anymore. It would have been Casino Island, is what we were saying. So I just think what everyone is trying to do here, it's just so important. And that's really, the way that we're going to be able to move forward is by joining everybody's power together. And just lastly, I just want to say, when we started fighting against the casino in Coney Island, talk about, David versus Goliath, we were what we were up against. And, I remember saying to somebody, if we fight against this, there's no guarantee that we're going to win. But if we don't fight against it, then we're guaranteed to lose. So we might as well fight. And we did, and somehow, we managed to win. And I think there's other victories that could be had by joining all these forces together and all these people together. So I hope that this continues on and that this forum tonight is really a catalyst to keep that going.
By the way, I was just able to join my wife's
There you are.
computer, so I'm here. So
We're ready to either do a follow-up for Marissa or introduce John Leva.
why don't we introduce John?
Marissa, show off your shirt. Coney Island
Uh,
had the best merch.
yeah, I haven't worn this in like months now.
Yeah, it was kind of easy. Everybody loves Coney Island. Um, I can't tell you guys how inspired I am by to this call here today. Like just all of us here, and I've seen a lot of you in different fights. I sat in a classroom with Renee, and Marissa, when you showed up, that gave us so much energy. We were like, somebody else in the city cares about us, like, and that's what we have to do. We have to build together. And right now, what I've learned in these last 2 years, like I wish I knew then what I know now. But I want to share that with somebody who's just starting. And this is like our communities are under assault. Like this is crazy. Like when you put Jenny, the People's Beach, there actually is a People's Beach that they're building a private club on, right? So like like this is crazy. Like they just and like that's why we wanted to name this Reclaim Our City, because like they act like it's theirs, like for theirs to do whatever they want. And this is public land. This is our, like if in our generation we lose public housing and they privatize all of it, we failed. We failed. You know what I mean? Like that's crazy that could happen under our watch. And we need to all fight together to stop that. And all of this public land and giving it away just and to build stuff that it's not for us. It's not for us. It's not, they're not taking into consideration the communities. Like I'm so inspired by what Elizabeth has done. Like it's just it blows my mind. And when I hear her talk, it's like, yes, this is what we need, because that's exactly what we need too. That sometimes people come in even with good intentions into our communities and just try to kind of tell us what we should do. And no, just listen to us. The people closest to the problems usually have the best solutions, or whatever that the saying is. So yeah,
John, back up for a lot of the people and just tell them what the fight that you're engaged in is about.
okay. Well, the Brooklyn Marine Terminal, which they want to take a port that's been there for generations and just turn it into mostly luxury housing, right? They want to cut it in half. Now we wanted to to keep it a port because we believe in the blue highway. We want to get trucks off the roads. We want resiliency. We want all this other stuff. The building luxury or any type of housing really on a flood zone in a on what is it called? On landfill. Like we've had a history of buildings falling apart here, just falling, collapsing. There used to be buildings where they want to build and they collapsed like in the 80s. Just like 10 years ago here on the corner, when they were doing Kiwanis sewer work, a building collapsed. So like for them to build what they're trying to build, I don't even think that the structure is nearby. But anyway, that's going into the weeds of it. So really it was that, just fighting for the Brooklyn Marine Terminal and how they've just like that's the only way I could describe it. It was an assault on our community. Like they just came in and like bombarded us with information, with stuff that we didn't understand. We had to like educate ourselves and just like find out what's land use. Like I was into tenant stuff. I don't know what land use is. I didn't know what a GPP or Europe or this and that. By the time I found out, they're already using it against us. You know what I mean? So I'm hoping that we can get together and help each other out, so that when new communities are, we can reach out to them and tell them, expect this, know that this is coming, and that's and I think that if we can do that, it'll be a powerful, and we can start a real powerful movement here. I think this right here that's happening today is their worst nightmare. This is their worst nightmare, that we get together and that we support each other and that one group is talking to another. They want us to be fighting in silos and in isolation, and but us together, like, oh my God. So this is what I'm hoping, that this is the spark right here.
Yeah. Well, part of what you're fighting for in many ways is something that Elizabeth alluded to, and that was the Blue Highway, the ability to keep maritime uses along the water's edge rather than build housing, which is desperately needed in the city, but build housing where it's safe rather than where it's exposed to sea level rise and to high water table, which is what exists in the air. They'd have to raise the land 18 feet in order to put the housing on the waterfront in where the marine terminal is. It's 122 acres of public land. So privatization, which is an issue that was raised by Renee, really occurs quietly. Uh, Environmental injustice has to guide our decisions. We need to be careful of quasi-independent agencies. All of these are common common problems that each of you who've spoken have raised. How do people really feel about pulling together what really could be a, a coalition of organizations, uh, or at least sign on to the letter of public land for public good in this context? Do you have any response? Elizabeth?
Me? Oh,
Hey,
because you're gonna ask me. Hell yeah. Let's get it.
you,
Let's do
anybody.
it.
Because I think it's important, and Elizabeth and Renee, I think, pointed it out as well, and Jack, about the need to create a common base by which we all can operate and can all function. But I think there are some questions from the audience, and Alex, if you could
Yes.
if you can join
Can I
in
just say,
and just raise them.
we need to do what the other side does so successfully. We need to do it. Like, I gotta give it to the Yimbys. I gotta give it to them. Like, they've organized, they've gotten involved, they've gotten into the community boards. They go to and almost in mass to like community board meetings, and they testify and stuff like that. And that's what we need to do better than them. And I know we can do it better than them. We just haven't, but they've really like gotten involved in a way, and they've gotten themselves into organizations and this and that in ways that we need to do better and to match their strength in that department.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
This question, I think it's for Renee Kidd, and it says here, why not create opportunities for ownership for these NYCHA residents, co-ops? Can we empower and uplift these residents to make this deal equitable? Renee?
Renee?
First of all, that's a very hard lift. We do not own, frankly, owning is a whole nother thing. So that's basically taking apart laws that are already there. So we also need to stop trying to do that ownership model. Everyone says, why don't residents own? Everyone, see, we have to stop it. In many ways, ownership does not guarantee that you will keep it. It does not guarantee generational wealth. Owning a home, wealth should not be connected to owning a home. We have to stop that model. It is, in many cases, a colonial model. We are literally watching a man being taken down to Georgia to get his home. It's the wrong model. The model should be, why aren't we helping people and subsidizing homes? Why aren't people being at 30%, up to 30% to rent? Everyone doesn't want to own a home. Home does not guarantee wealth. Depending on where a home is, depends upon your ability to continue to have it. There are places people have built homes that basically have no infrastructure and they're continually flooding. We need to be asking different questions. That doesn't guarantee anything, owning anything. So
Renee,
that's where the mindset has to begin.
yeah. Renee raises, I think, a very important point that many of us have not alluded to in the past. And there are many people who've created wealth for their family by buying a home. My family has benefited from the fact that over 50 years ago, I bought a house in Brooklyn. And as a result, we have the capital and independent wealth that we would not have had if we didn't buy that house. particularly on a Pratt faculty salary. You'll never be able to even own a home today. And it seems to me that there are two ways that people create wealth. One is through jobs, and everybody's fighting for those, and I think that's good. But the other is building wealth and capital, and that needs to be democratized, and it's not. And one of the things that's being done by the Grid Project is that it's enabling small businesses to be owned by the community. The solar collectors are being owned by the community. In Alaska, a lot of the mines, the land there that is generating wealth are now being shared through the tax system with the residents of Alaska. We have to find mechanisms by which people can build wealth that is independent of housing. Because one of the reasons that housing keeps going up and up is that it just serves one generation. Whoever buys my home because of its wealth has to be wealthy because they can't afford it otherwise. And I think it's important that we begin to look at housing as not the only mechanism for families building wealth, because it's only a one generation solution. Your children can't afford it, and your grandchildren can't afford it. And so, what we need to begin to do is develop the concept that housing is a human right and it should be provided for. And it really is indispensable that we begin to look at it from that perspective. We have to begin to understand that privatization, which Renee is fighting against, is very insipid. It is quiet. It takes over very quickly. And but by allowing the privatization of public housing, we're eliminating opportunities for people to, in some way, create wealth by saving money, by being able to send their children to college because they're not paying exorbitant rents. We really need to do what all of the speakers have been talking about, really build on indigenous leadership and indigenous histories, and how do we really apply them to both our economy and to the way we plan and develop our cities. So I think the question here is a very important one. Uh, but just co-opting public housing will mean one generation of public housing residents will benefit, but the next generation of low and moderate income families will not have a way out. We need to do something that when I started out, and it wasn't 5 generations ago, it was 7 generations. I have to correct the introduction. One of the things we all thought of is that we could abolish poverty. Nobody talks about that today. And so we have to find new ways and new economic ways of using our land resources and the wealth of organizing and the capabilities of all the people who are on this call, those who've spoken and those who haven't spoken, and say, how do we really begin to address the issues that are fundamental to our well-being? How do we use the land and the value that land can generate to benefit the mass of people rather than just a few? That's the challenge that the public land for a public good is trying to establish. That's the work that Renee is trying to protect. That's the work that Jack is trying to develop. It's basically, I think, and the reason Elizabeth's comments are so relevant is that they're beginning to undertake and beginning to implement in Sunset Park. There's still challenges, but these are things that I think we have to allude to and we can't hide from. Alec, are there other questions?
Yes, this one wasn't directed to anybody. So whoever has the answer, it's from Suki from our coalition, Public Land for Public Good. And it says here, I heard from a planner in Queens that when public land is given to the EDC or other developers, it gets voted on by the borough board, consisting of chairs of each community board and council members. This is a binding vote. It hasn't been happening in Brooklyn. Does it happen in Manhattan? No, I mean, I can say I've been to one very tedious borough board meeting, but I don't remember if it was about public land. Does anybody know? Should I repeat the question?
Elizabeth, Renee, anybody you know?
No, I don't know about what the EDC does at its borough board meetings.
All I can say is I sit on the advisory board to the Atlantic Yards Community Development Corporation, and the Empire State Development Corporation makes the decisions by a small group of gubernatorial appointed individuals. The advisory board isn't even consulted before they take actions. I don't believe the borough presidents are involved. They may they may be listened to once in a while through a public hearing if there's a zoning action that is required. But quite frankly, one of the things we really have to take a look at is how we look at quasi-independent entities and how we make them accountable. And that's the EDC, the state entities and others. Right now, they're not accountable to the public. And as a result, they're they continue to make mistakes. They'll take a project like Atlantic Yards and they give it to one developer rather than to a half a dozen developers, all of whom you become dependent then on one developer. And it seems, and instead of seeing work being done concurrently, you see it being done sequentially, and it takes decades and decades to develop the housing. We have a housing problem in New York State, but the house and in New York City, but the housing problem is that we don't provide enough low and moderate income housing. We're not providing housing for families. We've developed this whole agenda now on commodification of public goods. This agenda of actually looking at abundance. We need more and more housing. Building more and more housing is not going to solve our problem. Building more family housing, building more affordable housing will solve our problem. And we've got to start using language and talking about it in detail. We need to build housing for every quartile of our population, every segment of our population, not only the super wealthy and the few that can afford the affordable units. Alec, any more questions?
Well, I have a question for you, for me, and that's about the EDC. Like logic would make you think that because they're a nonprofit, and correct me if they're not, but they would kind of at least give a fair shake to other nonprofit like housing developers. But it seems that they have this knee-jerk reaction, cookie cutter kind of favoritism towards private developers. So it provides a confusion for me. Can you respond to that?
I think they're misleading you. They're misleading you. I think at best what they do in some circumstances is allow the not-for-profit developers, the community-based housing groups, who've in many cases renovated and rebuilt their neighborhoods. They now are dependent on additional income to stay alive and to continue their mission. And to some degree, they'll enter into an agreement with a private developer, even though it sometimes violates their original missions. The fact of the matter is that EDC and other organizations are appointees. Their accountability is to no one except themselves, and many of them eventually wind up working for the private corporations that they're working with. The present president of EDC is now world headquarter. He's now the world economic. He manages the world portfolio for New York University.
He is
We'll
the
constantly
Robert Moses of our time.
Elizabeth, say that again.
And he is the Robert Moses of our time, and I am his Juana Jacobs. Anyway, I do want to say that while we're talking about economics and trying to come up with systems that move us towards a just transition, looking at different kinds of economies, different economies of scale, moving away from capitalism, because that's the thing that's killing the planet and killing us, that we not forget to talk about race. The decisions are made in our community based on who lives there. And regardless of income, if you're Black, chances are you're living next to environmental burdens because of redlining or whatever. I think that people don't want to talk about that. I think that if people talk about the economy, somehow they feel like they could keep race at a distance. And we are seeing the emptying out of Harlem, Bed-Stuy, even East New York, where our parents told us we couldn't go. Like, seriously. So I just want to make sure that we normalize talking about race, and the people who need to talk about it the most are the people who consider themselves liberals or are uncomfortable with people of color and leadership on issues that affect them personally and affect their communities. We started by talking about the possibility of creating a coalition, and I sat back thinking, I'm the co-founder of the Climate Justice Alliance. And I also co-founded New York Renews, which is a coalition of 400 folks. And I'm a member of the New York City Environmental Justice Alliance. And I thought, oh my God, one more freaking coalition. God, take me now, right? Mostly because the hardest thing in getting through coalitions is how decisions are made and who takes up the most amount of space, who thinks they're the smartest person in the room. So I offer, as I always do, the Hermes principles for democratic organizing for you guys to sit there and sit with them for a second, because honestly, how we engage with each other is the thing that kills coalitions and kills our opportunity to have leverage. Some of us are in the process of decolonizing, and we don't want to be led by white folks anymore. We don't want to do that. We know what we need to do. We want people who are allies, not people who think they know more than we do. Because you think about who we are and where we come from and how we got to where we are, we're pretty freaking smart given what we've gone through. So we want a different kind of vibe, a different kind of flow. And so in order for there to be a coalition, we're going to have some serious core values that we all have in common, where we're not going to be competing with each other, where we learn how to collaborate. And if we're going to be able to get something out of this gathering today. And I know it's not the thing that people want to hear. It's easier to talk about tax credits, and it's easier to talk about different kinds of systems than to talk about how we are with each other. But that's the hard part, because it's in our DNA how we're treating each other. So I just want to say that. I want to say also one more thing about participatory budget. So we've been trying to be creative about these different processes, and the participatory budget process, what it does is it gives people an opportunity to move money to things that the city should be paying for anyway. And so I want us to rethink how that process works to support the work that needs to be supported in our communities, because right now it just makes people feel good, but it makes the city happy that they don't have to take care of something that they were responsible for taking care of. These are the things we should be thinking about. We should be really thinking about what kind of governance do we need in the age of climate change and the rise of white supremacy, or the new emboldenment of, that's what we should be thinking about. And within that, we will be able to talk about all these different things, because we're running from one issue to the other. But at the heart of that is the fact that this is a racist country that is capitalist, that was built on our extraction and wants to keep that system going. And so we can't address that unless we are okay with each other.
Thank you.
I have a question from Christina Chase for the panelists. So how can we support each of your campaigns right now? And how can we cross-pollinate and work together in solidarity? And Christina adds, as a Queens NYCHA resident, I'm interested in supporting the movement against the casino in Flushing, while dreaming how some folks might help us support NYCHA residents too. So panelists.
So let's start with Renee.
One, you could sign our petition to Mamdani. That's one ask. Another thing, also make sure you let people know, your electeds, that public housing is important to you. I literally was once told by an official that nobody cares about public housing. She literally said that to me, and then tried to cut a deal to get one of her people in, that if you beat demolition, I got some few people that can do a pack deal for you. I said, no, thank you. So public housing is important. Let people know that it is, that you care about it. That's one of the things you can do. One, when we have a press conference, come on out. Let people know, and we'll let people know we're doing it. Stop FEC demolition is on the on Instagram. At the same time, listen to us. Section 9 is important. Budget hearings, it is important. No demolition of any NYCHA property is important, because the next target is already here, and that's Meltzer Towers. And that's a senior building. That's what you can do. Care. Don't try to get us anymore to say we need to build, say you need to build public housing, Section 9 public housing. When the budget comes out, say we wanted to go to Section 9 public housing. Understand that's important. Understand we are all in community. We need to unsilo the various different housing. For FEC particularly, as I stated, signed the petition to let Mamdani know. Those people who can influence the Mamdani administration, let them know. He does not want to speak with us. He'll have the Mayor's Office of Tenant Protection do that. That's where you can begin. Also, we have something called the 964 regulations. That's where you all should be as well, and share it. Share what's going on at Fulton and Elliott Chelsea. Care about your neighborhoods and various NYCHA developments. That's what you can do as well. This is not just our fight, it's everyone's fight. The more people who pile on, the more he might listen. And there's no guarantee that he will listen. The decision has been made that we should do what they think, and they are anti-democratic at its core when doing that. So that's where we're at.
Jack?
Thank you, Renee and Ron. I think first and foremost, if you can, everybody follow us on Instagram at No Casino FMCP. That's where we post a lot of updates. Whenever we have any public events, if you can show up and be an extra person to help out, that would be really helpful. I think one key is to never stop shaming, never stop pressuring the elected officials that were either silent or complicit in this project going through. Tell all of your friends about the project and what's been happening. We need to make sure that this issue never goes away, that every time an elected official that was complicit walks around the corner, there's another resident that tells them how much they dislike the project. Governor Hochul herself, as obviously the governor and has power over the Gaming Commission, actually has the power to revoke the license at any time for any reason. And so Governor Hochul is always going to be a key stakeholder in the fight against the project. Mamdani obviously has given a lot of power to Hochul in the alliance that they've built. And so he's obviously a key stakeholder in all of this as well. And then finally, there are lawsuits going on in which I am one of the plaintiffs, and we are suing the state as well as Cohen's Casino for basically holding biased public hearing processes that undemocratically silenced folks that were against the casino and uplifted folks that were for the casino. So that lawsuit is ongoing. One lawsuit is being represented by Take Root Justice. They've been a great partner to the Flushing Workers Center, which is the plaintiff in that case. I think just if you know anybody in law, if you have allies in like nonprofit legal defense funds, like please send them our way. We need all the help we can get. We are in a lawsuit against the state and against somebody who's worth $23 billion. So all the help we can get.
Elizabeth?
Yeah, a few things. One is help us declare Sunset Park a special purpose district to operationalize the grid. Make demands to make sure that the significant maritime industrial areas are use to address the climate crisis, because everything that everybody's working on is going to be exacerbated by climate change, and this will create walk to work communities where we could attract green jobs, where people can make a living and remain in their communities. Demand changes in EDC in terms of accountability and also transparency. We need to find out who are the corporations that they're negotiating deals with. I know that in our community, they are talking to AI, they are talking to Mitsubishi, they're talking to all kinds of corporations that are looking to lands in our industrial waterfront, and support the leadership of DCP so that that agency changes and becomes an ally in decision making when it comes to zoning and land use. I think that we have an opportunity for reform right now. And I think that we should use the fact that there are some people who come out of movement spaces and have gone into these spaces. Well, they need to engage in co-governance. So we can be reached at Uprose Brooklyn if you're on Instagram. And Uprose on other social media, and Uprose BK if you're on Facebook. And then I also want to remind people that September 19th is our 60th anniversary. It's not a small thing that a grassroots organization that was organized, that was created during a people's assembly during the civil rights movement is still in existence and is still transforming the landscape and is still doing the things that we do. I want to remind folks that not all nonprofits are the same. Some of us anchor injustice, and some of us send money back, and some of us won't even compromise. We wouldn't have been able to win against Industry City had we compromised, and we weren't willing to compromise on justice, on the lives of people. So it's more nuanced. So support the ones who you believe in, and the ones that are doing the work that is transformative. You'll know who they are. But peace, gracias, and thank you for the opportunity to share this platform with such badasses. This is pretty amazing.
Alec, are there any more questions?
Well, I see a great suggestion from Len Paletta about possibly forming a regular program on WBAI. And does anybody have any thoughts on that?
Well, we did have a program on WBAI, and you might want to try to Google it. It included Renee and myself and John Leah discussing the Brooklyn Marine Terminal and public housing.
John Leva.
So I think
Hello.
I'll try to get a link and put it on the chat. I also would like somebody to make sure that the Jabez principles, which Elizabeth alluded to, is also put on the chat, because I think it is a very great way of helping build what really are a multiracial democracy. And to really build organizational development that really is targeted towards building a stronger and more healthy democracy where race and class is not hidden from one's view and is and puts up is basically center. I have to apologize to folks. I think something was wrong with my university account, and that was why I couldn't get on, or maybe they have expelled me. I have no idea. And so I
That's okay.
I had to deal with the discussion, and it was a little disoriented. It was, I feel a little disjointed. But public land is one of the most powerful tools we have to build a racially just city. It should be used permanently, democratically, and equitably for public good, not quietly converted into private gain. And I think that's the underlying struggle that we are all having in each of the three communities that we talked about. The residents of public housing in Greenpoint and East Williamsburg are facing the same thing. We are seeing privatization taking place in the Rockaways. We're seeing housing being proposed along the waterfront, as John pointed out, that are in in harm's way at a point in time where thousands of units of public housing are not only threatened by privatization, but they're threatened by climate change. There are people living in the Rockaways who are one storm away from displacement. And so we really have to begin to figure out how we find the proper place for housing to be built and build it quickly and not play games of trying to build housing that presumably is there to benefit the, the public at large, but will just provide primarily luxury housing on the Brooklyn waterfront. We need to begin to find places to build housing for the residents who desperately need housing and for those who we know will be displaced. We don't know when, but we know will be displaced by storms in the future. And so the issues that are being raised tonight, some of them are hard to grapple with. Some of them are contentious, but they really are critically important. We really have to look and see that public assets serve public purposes, that publicly created value should be captured for public benefit, that privatization should not be allowed to occur, but it occurs quietly and incessantly. Housing should be thought of as a human right, and public land should prioritize deeply affordable housing and permanent housing for very low, and moderate income populations. Environmental justice must guide our decisions. Racial justice must guide our decisions. Indigenous histories and leadership must be respected. Land is not only a financial asset, it carries history, culture, pollution, and displacement. Uh, I'm sorry, culture, ecology, and obligation. We have an obligation to maintain the land. And quasi-independent entities, I don't care which they are, must become accountable. Right now, they're not accountable. They lead to the formation of people who are power hungry and exercise that power, and that power has never benefit the majority of people. So I may sound like I am anti-development, but I am very pro-development. But the development that I am for is one that is indigenous and comes from the people and from the communities themselves. Any other questions or comments by the panelists?
Can you hear me? I'm sorry. Can you hear me? It says
Ken.
internet connection unstable.
No, we can hear you,
We
Alex.
hear you.
Oh, okay. Renee, go ahead. Sorry.
I would say one thing and very important is stop using the word affordable. It's become rather a meaningless word. When people use affordable, there's no discussion about what the income brackets are. That's where we're at a point. So every time someone says affordable, I'm like, okay, am I to take you seriously? I need to know what you mean. What is the income brackets and who are you building for? Because at this point, we're only building for people at the $34,000 level and above, and that will change. When you do it, because of New York's, how should I say, contentious racial history, there was a lawsuit. As of now, 20% of Housing Connect goes to people who are within the neighborhood. By 2029, it's 15%. You are not building for the people who live here. You are building for the future, for someone else. Therefore, you are practicing erasure and you are complicit in destruction of communities, social networks, and neighborhoods. The people who built it and stabilized it. This administration knows it. When you're speaking about using housing to leverage workplace, we have it under Section 9. Within that is Section 3, where you are supposed to be hiring residents and their businesses, which more or less circles back into a whole ecosystem which will strengthen the housing authority itself. We are for Section 9. We are not for NYCHA itself. It is merely an administrative agency. We need to understand these things. We need to unsilo housing. We need to work together. We need to not think that home ownership will solve the problems. Owning an apartment is nice, but everyone will not do it. Everyone cannot do it. Everyone can afford to do it. We need to understand that. As has been said previously, there's no guarantee it will do them generations. We have equity, literally people, big corporations buying up homes. There's no guarantee that will work in the future the way we are now. We need to come to a new understanding of housing as a human right and basically understand what we're really going for. Right now, Section 9 is public and Indian housing. We are being treated like we are the new indigenous people, and we know how that has turned out. We are in desperate amounts of trouble, and we need to change things quickly.
Thank you,
Well said.
Renee, and thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you, Jack. I'm going to turn it over to Victoria, who has a couple of announcements to make.
I'm sorry, Ron, you weren't that there, but I think John is going to close us out. So I want to thank everybody. I am going to make sure the Jimenez principles are shared and all of everybody's comments. I'll share the chat and the recording because I think that there's a lot of we can be doing to make sure we're uplifting each other's voices here. And I want the information to be at everybody's fingertips to take the next steps. And hopefully you take the time to do that. John, would you like to close us out?
You kind of just did. We want to thank all the panelists. This has been an amazing, amazing panel on the respondents and attendees. And this is an inspiration for me. And I hope that we can keep this conversation going and we can build on it and really help our communities out. We're all in the same fight against the same people. And if we got together, we'd be unstoppable. This is going to be recorded and we're going to share it in a follow-up email along with, that's why I put on a Google Doc to see if people could share like their movements, their links and everything so we can get this started and get people into, because like I want to know when your deadlines are for testimonies and stuff like that, you know what I mean? And I want to be able to share mine so we can do this and really exchange, deadlines and rallies and whatever else we can do, right? We want to remind people that lift, right? The land inventory fast track is something that we got to keep an eye on. I actually went to the Furman breakfast with Jenny, and it was nasty. I could tell you that right now. It was like the vibe in the whole room. It was a bunch of developers. At one point, I'll say it, Layla Borzak mentioned affordable housing, and everybody laughed. And I was like, wow, this is crazy, right? Like they just laughed like it was a joke. Like, so that's something that we need to keep an eye on because there's going to be places in our communities that we should be aware of what they're trying to do. And it matters what they build there. Like this is what we've been talking about all night, right? So yeah, and Jenny, are you gonna post the link to the letter? Is it there? Everybody, like Jenny,
Yeah, we've been posting.
our open letter to Mamdani one last time, if you can put
Yeah,
it.
I can do that.
And any other and anybody, let's see, everybody, just put on your links right now. Just put your links on so we can really help each other out and support each other. I think this is the beginning of something huge.
John, do you want to put your link into the chat, the one with open access? Because I saw you said there was a blank document that you started. I don't see the link. Why don't you put the link into the chat?
And we're going to be reaching out to everyone who attended, and we will share all kinds of information with you guys. And also, please keep your eyes open, because if there's enough energy and interest citywide, perhaps we will do something, a joint press conference or rally or something, to kind of reiterate to our mayor all the thoughts and ideas that are brought up here on this call, including centering public housing, no more casinos on our public land, respect the environment and the fact that our skies are turning orange, and please don't knock down hundreds of mature trees that are sheltering mostly Black and Latino and Asian people living in public housing in Chelsea. Please stop giving our public land away to developers. I think Mamdani should hear from us. So if you allow us to, we will share any ideas we have for maybe a joint action, a citywide action together.
And a really fast question for Renee. How many months has your coalition been waiting to have an audience with Mamdani? Because I think you asked pretty early on in the year.
Since February. That's when I'm sure a lot of people saw the Instagram reel where we said we want to speak with the mayor, and there has been no response. Sia Weaver said that that is unable to happen. That's all she said. And she has not returned to our resident association, which I extended an invitation once again, but I guess after that reel went out, somehow she got amazingly busy.
Well, you know what? On that note, I encourage everyone to sign the petition, and individuals or organizations can sign. It's the second link that you see there that I keep posting over and over. It is directed at the mayor, our fine mayor, and above that is a link from the Public Land for Public Good Coalition, also a Dear Mamdani letter, and that's for organizations.
Hopefully this will just be the beginning of our work together in the city.
Thanks, everybody. And I also think you want to just thank everybody for their great ideas and the conversation and that giving people space to be heard. We're very open to making sure that we have a great space because all ideas are important here to figure out a path forward together. So thank you for your participation. Have a good night.
Thank you all for attending.
Right.
Thank you all.